As the kids say, Skinwalker? I hardly know her. I'm Aiden Mattis, and welcome back to the Lore Lodge. Torrey, Utah is a small town with a big problem. For the last few years, residents of the sleepy community in south central Utah have been experiencing a living nightmare, with shadowy presences, strange dreams, and dark figures stalking the streets at night. At the center of this bizarre whirlwind of paranormal activity is the Austin family, proprietors of a local general store and inn who believe that something may have followed a member of the family home after he returned from a visit to the infamous Skinwalker Ranch. Given the nature of the activity, the connection with the famous paranormal hotbed, and the war-torn history of the region, it has been proposed that the town isn't just experiencing your average infestation or haunting, but instead a full-on invasion by none other than the Skinwalkers themselves. Or at least, that's what Zak Bagans and the guys over at Ghost Adventures believe is going on. And I do realize his name is pronounced Bagans, but Bagans is funnier. Now, as we recently discovered, Zak has absolutely no idea what Skinwalkers are, but that doesn't necessarily mean that nothing is going on. While I couldn't find any references to paranormal activity affecting James Austin, his family, or the town of Torrey as a whole prior to their visit by the Ghost Adventures team, at least one member of the family did strike me as being particularly earnest about his experiences, and a couple of other witnesses came across as genuine, either in terms of their confidence about the things they were talking about, or their fear. Leaving aside the issue of Skinwalkers, this one specific family member describes phenomena with not only a very sincere tone, but also a sense of certainty which you don't often see from people other than actors and eyewitnesses. While there are a few situations where it does appear he might say something that's been staged for dramatic effect, his descriptions of events during interviews come across as honest, even compared to other members of the Austin household. To him, the dark figures, the discomforting dreams, they seem to be as real as anything. And that is what really drew me into the situation. And before you laugh, I do have my reasons. As I watched the episode Skinwalker Invasion and saw how this one individual spoke about his experiences, I couldn't help but remember something a friend of mine who once worked on a similar show said while filming at a location not far from my home. You see, everything which made it to television was staged, he said, but a lot of things that didn't show up on TV weren't. So, I wondered, could this be one of those rare cases where a group of pretend ghost hunters stumbled across something real, only to miss it because they were so focused on the narrative they intended to create? And if so, what on earth attached itself to this family? Now, as for Skinwalkers, whether you believe in them or not, I do want to tell you guys about something I believe in. And that's today's sponsor, Rocket Money. I've never been good with budgeting. I've never really been good at math in general, anything involving numbers. And that was not a big problem when I was just a single man looking to get through to my next payday. And in fact, since the last time we did an ad for Rocket Money, where I had just announced that I got engaged, congratulations to me, and more importantly to my fiance. I love her very much. She's amazing. But, as it turns out, guys, weddings are expensive. I genuinely did not have a grasp on how expensive weddings could be. So I have been having to change a lot of things about my spending, about my saving, and Rocket Money has been an absolute lifesaver for that. You see, put simply, Rocket Money is an all-in-one personal finance app that helps me cancel unwanted subscriptions, lower bills, and most importantly, manage my money better. It's got a very approachable user interface that connects seamlessly with my banks, my credit cards, and my investment accounts, and it even helps me to plan my savings for those bigger purchases, like an entire vineyard estate for an evening with up to 150 of my closest friends and family. I'm really hoping the food's worth it. But aside from just helping me to plan where money is going to go, Rocket Money has also helped me to cut out waste by detecting subscriptions that I didn't even know I had, and showing me that I have been a very bad boy about delivery apps when I am perfectly capable of cooking my own stews. Oh, I'm making stew this week. As I have said for years, whenever we take a sponsored segment, we do our best to make sure that it is a company, a brand, a tool that our audience can genuinely benefit from. And Rocket Money is a perfect example. So if you'd like to give it a try for yourself and join me and over 5 million others in getting control of your finances, head to rocketmoney.com/lorelodge or click the link in the description to get started for free. The owner of the Chuck Wagon Inn, Bagans begins at the outset of his show. He's concerned, he's scared. His whole family and staff are in fear because he believes there is an invasion of skinwalkers here in the town of Torrey, Utah. What are skinwalkers? Well, according to Zak, in Native American culture, skinwalkers are violent shape-shifting creatures summoned by witch doctors and evil shamans to serve as avatars in order to do their bidding and even kill their enemies. As we established last time we talked about ghost adventures, that's just completely incorrect, but hey, don't let facts ruin a good story. You see, Torrey is supposedly a very sacred space, which Zak explains was once occupied by the Ute, Navajo, and Paiute over 9,000 years ago.
It's over 9,000! What, 9,000? There's no way that can be right!
Which, of course, is thousands upon thousands of years before either the Ute or Paiute existed as recognizable cultures, and over 8,000 years before the Navajo had even left Canada. They were definitely there 200 years ago, though, and the gang believes the haunted Chuck Wagon Inn contains something affected by the desecration of Native American artifacts from that much more recent time period. The entire town is basically shut down for the season by the time they get there, but they do stop into the gift shop where Zak buys a flute. And this is important because Zak proceeds to play it outside at night as they walk up to do their first interview with the owner's son, Devin. The young man promptly suggests that Zak stop playing the flute because his native friends say it attracts skinwalkers, which does sound questionable to me, but it could be true. He could have native friends who told him that. They also might not be Navajo, they might be Ute or Paiute, in which case that would be a reasonable mistake to make. After all, a bunch of Navajo lied to Zak's face in an earlier episode on the so-called Skinwalker Canyon, but in this case, Devin is convinced of the Skinwalker issue because he once visited Skinwalker Ranch, which Zak describes as a hotbed of paranormal events, notoriously involving these violent shape-shifted entities located just to the north of Torrey. Apparently 212 road miles or 158 non-road miles is just north. Anyway, Devin is concerned because while at the ranch, he was kind of mocking it. Now, he experienced nothing while at Skinwalker Ranch, but upon returning to Torrey, he had a strange experience one night after leaving the inn. Right under the streetlight, he recounts, there were these 3 8 or 9 foot tall black figures with glowing yellow eyes. Upon seeing them, his stomach dropped, he got full body chills, and then he turned around, only to find that the creatures were already down at the other end of the street, almost as if they'd teleported. And this was something he had never experienced before, but he's certain that it was real. And to Devin's credit, I don't really think he's lying. He comes across as incredibly sincere, which suggests to me that he's either telling the truth about what he saw, or that he's an incredibly well-trained actor, and the latter just seems pretty unlikely considering he has no acting credits to his name anywhere. But Devin also isn't the only member of the family to have claimed to encounter something strange. His brother, Hunter, recalls a night when he and James, his father, were out at a cabin on the property fixing a fireplace. It was around 3 in the morning when they finished up, and as they left the building to go home, they saw an 8 foot tall black figure with glowing eyes standing a few yards to the left of the doorway. James turned on the headlights of the truck, but once again, the figure remained pitch black even in the direct light. Whatever the thing was, it didn't seem interested in attacking them, so they just decided to avoid looking at it, not acknowledge it, and leave. Which, interestingly enough, is exactly what Ed Warren said that you should do with demons, so we got fraud on fraud. But this weird little apparition of the black figure thing wouldn't be the end of the weird experiences at the cabin, because sometime later, a man who was new to the area came to the Austins looking for work. They offered him a job at the Chuck Wagon, and they also gave him that cabin to stay in. One night, he told them that he saw a black figure hovering over him while he was taking a nap in a chair in that room, and he was so shaken by the experience that he said he would rather try to sleep out in the woods and take his chances with the coyotes than stay in that building. As it turned out, that guy was an escaped convict, and Hunter told the guys that he had called the marshals. I was able to find the exact person in question, John Freeman Colt, and learned that he was involuntarily committed all the way back in 2006 after being convicted for crimes including, and bear with my euphemisms because YouTube, aggravated intimate battery, attempted unwanted intimacy, aggravated burglary, and 4 counts of aggravated battery against law enforcement. He was apparently committed in Kansas for being too dangerous to release. His probable cause statement, filed by U.S. Marshal Deputy Jason Pizza, however, I'm not kidding, that is his name, Jason Pizza, may contradict the claim that the Austins called the marshals on him. Instead, the deputy reported that they received multiple tips about Colt having a tent site near Wayne County, and that they set up a sting in a parking lot not far from that site. Colt was then seen driving past on a motorcycle, at which point the marshals initiated a traffic stop. Colt attempted to escape, but was caught after a high-speed chase, and after his arrest, officials discovered a Facebook page referenced by Hunter Austin in the Ghost Adventures episode. All of that said, the probable cause file confirms he did work at the Chuck Wagon in 2021, and there is news footage of the Austins' cabin and the haunted recliner, so Colt definitely was there. So Hunter's recounting of events doesn't sound quite right based on the other evidence I found, but all the important parts do exist. But whatever the full truth of Hunter's story is, it seems that by the time Zak's crew arrived, everyone in the family had had at least one encounter with the entities. James said that he and his wife, Jerry, sometimes back the truck out and listen to music late at night, which is kind of weird, but whatever, and that the entities will come around the truck and they'll hit on all 4 sides. He describes them as like 7 feet tall with yellow eyes, and seems surprised when Zak tells him that he just described them the same way that his sons did. James also recounted having a weird dream experience in which one of the dark figures came out of his closet and tried to kill him. He's not the only one to experience this either. Earlier in the episode, Devin had pulled Zak aside to tell him about some psychological effects he'd been experiencing, which he believed to be related to these strange entities. Saying that he's never really experienced depression, he recounts a dream experience in which he watched another version of himself walk up to him and shoot him. James also shows the guys a video from one of his security cameras, which shows a shadowy figure walking near a fence line. To me, it really just looks like artifacting around a person walking, but that's neither here nor there. We don't hear much about what Jerry Austin has experienced, but Zak does tell us early in the episode that while she was taking the group out to do the opening soundbite shots, they stopped by the family's ranch south of town. While there, Zak claims that as he stood outside of a house which has been abandoned since the 70s, he saw a flash image of a Native American man. And later on, while sitting for an interview with her husband, Jerry confirms that she too saw that apparition at the same time. And that's not all either, because the family said that they'd once discovered Native American artifacts on the property, though it's never made clear exactly what those were. Because that happened here, Zak explains, I want to add on this house of horror. First, however, they need to head out to a cave, where Austin family friend Amy Talbot said that she came across something strange just a few weeks before the Ghost Adventures guys got there. While out on a walk in the nearby wilderness, she recalled how she felt drawn to a specific area where the rock had fallen in and it kind of looked like an arch. Just beneath the arch was a little pile that looked like a fire that somebody had maybe put out with some dirt. Upon closer inspection, however, she saw that there were 2 medallions on the pile, one of Mary and one of Jesus. So, considering that that does seem like some sort of ritual was performed, they need to go check out the cave. Before they can do that, though, they're going to need some help. For the first time as an investigator, Zak tells the Austins, I'm learning that a skinwalker can also affect you psychologically, like a demonic attachment, but without the oppression. For this reason, he says, I need more expertise on this matter. He needs Sean Clenn, from Sean Clenn Shadow Productions. The afternoon after their arrival in Torrey, having spent the previous night doing baseline interviews with the Austins, Zak and the guys meet up with Sean Clenn, a self-described traditional Navajo practitioner and the Ghost Adventures crew's go-to when it comes to Native American and particularly Navajo folklore. With him along for the ride, they begin to make their way out to the cave where Amy claimed to have seen remnants of some sort of ritual, and Sean Clenn explains that this area in particular, you have all these mountain ranges. These were all sacred sites back in the day. The Navajo and the Utes used to go to war with each other and other tribes as well. Now you go into the Skinwalker lore and everything, that was a tactic that was used in the wars too back in the day. There's still some of those out here to this day. I have some bones to pick with some aspects of that, but let's hold off for now. This episode is about me making fun of ghost adventures, not Sean Klenn. Anyway, once they get within walking distance of their destination, Sean Klenn performs a song and gives the guys some ash that he says was blessed by a holy fire to aid in their spiritual protection as they prepare to enter the cave. Before getting any deeper than the entryway, the crew spots the remains of the pile of dirt and the fire that Amy spoke about, which I must say really looks like it was just placed there. Not placed there a few weeks ago, not discovered. It looks like they just put it there. But that's neither here nor there. Sean Klenn, who is carrying a katana for some reason, picks up the medallions using his knife as Zak asks him why non-native artifacts might be found in a cave known to contain skinwalkers. Now, at no point prior to this had anyone confirmed the existence of skinwalkers in the cave at all. This will happen again later with something else, by the way. But Sean Klenn explains that it could have been placed there by a family attempting to keep the skinwalkers away, hint, hint, wink, wink, or that it could be a bounty. And Sean Klenn then says that skinwalkers can sometimes be given bounties to kill people, which actually does track with the lore as it was recorded by the anthropologist Clyde Kluckhohn back in the 1930s. As we explained in our video on Skinwalker Canyon, Kluckhohn interviewed over 100 Navajo in the course of his about a decade of research living with them and studying them and learning about their ways and their cultures and customs. And he seems to be the authoritative source on Skinwalker lore, at least as far as academic research goes. But back to Ghost Adventures, Zak asks if someone might have targeted the Austins, and Sean Klenn responds that this is possible. And then they find animal fur inside the alleged fire pit, at which point Sean Klenn confirms that this could be part of the ritual because you have to give an offering if you want something done. In voiceover, Zak then says, if these animal remains are from a blood sacrifice for a Skinwalker conjuring ritual, then Devin and James are in grave danger. Not sure why Hunter and Jerry aren't in grave danger, or why Sean Klenn didn't tell them that Skinwalker conjuring rituals aren't a thing, because Skinwalkers aren't demonic entities, but at this point, I have no expectations. And almost as if to highlight the total lack of comprehension of what a Skinwalker is, Zak then asks Sean Klenn if there's anything you can do or say to call upon anything, to see if there's any response, like I would do to like a demon or something. Sean Klenn says something in Navajo and then pulls out an EMF reader before asking, were you part of any wars back in the day? Was there something buried in here, and was it released? Zak follows up by asking, is James and Devin marked? Are they in trouble? Are their lives in danger? And then, as an afterthought, he asks if whatever they're reaching out to... I'm sorry, it was so hard to write this line. As an afterthought, he asks whatever they're reaching out to, do you understand our English words? Sean Klenn then says something else in Navajo, at which point their EMF reader jumps from 0 to 2.5, prompting Sean Klenn to ask, is there anything physical behind me? Which is, I guess, the Ghost Adventures equivalent of Marvel humor. The reader jumps again, this time to 3, and Zak says, Sean Klenn, we're using a tri-field. It shouldn't be doing this. And then I had to look up what a tri-field is. Apparently it's a brand of EMF reader. So I guess Zak's point was that it's probably not malfunctioning because of the quality of the EMF reader. Really quickly, EMF readers are a legitimate thing. They do have actual use in electrical work specifically, in inspection work, things like that. So they are, EMF readers aren't just for ghost hunting. They are a practical tool of a trade that has been reassigned for this purpose. So yeah, my point here is that maybe that's a particularly well-trusted brand, either for ghost hunting or by electricians, or it could have just been deliberate product placement. Who knows, maybe he's got to deal with Tri-Field. Either way, it spiked right after Sean Klenn spoke in Navajo for that second time, and he tells Zak that he had asked, what are you doing here? Where do you come from? Oh wait, that wasn't Zak. Sorry, that was Sean Klenn. Didn't mean to make fun of you, Sean Klenn. Sean Klenn asks, are you Dene, which is the Navajo term for the Navajo, and the meter jumps to 5. Immediately after that, Zak says he feels tightness in his chest, and Sean Klenn hands him some rock salt, which I would not be surprised. I can't say for certain if that's a thing, but rock salt is seen as a cleansing thing in many cultures, probably because it has curative properties for meat and other things, but, I would believe that this is an actual thing. And, once he's got his rock salt, Zak begins to speak to whatever it is they're supposedly speaking to, telling it, do not possess me. Do not attack me. I'm not here to show disrespect. I'm protected. Which is a lot more in line with how you'd address a demon than, a human being who practices witchcraft. After a very dramatic cut to commercial break, there is an EMF reader on screen, which Zak says is completely still at 0, even as we watch it wavering back and forth between 0 and 0.2. This apparently tells him that the activity left, which again just isn't how Skinwalkers work, and Sean Clenn tells the group that when things got elevated, I picked up on hints of evil energy in there, so there's something else darker that's back in there. Something tells me it can't come out, but it wants to. He then says he needs to step away for a bit, which shocks the rest of the crew. Zak narrates that they're all concerned for their safety as unexplained things begin to happen. Though it's inaudible to the viewer, they all claim to have heard a wah-wah-wah-wah-wah sound, and then the tri-field EMF reader begins to jump up and down, as high as 12 milligauss, which is slightly higher than the single-digit readings given off by household appliances. If you're wondering what milligauss are, so was I. Apparently it's a unit used to measure magnetic flux density, also known as magnetic induction. Or in layman's terms, you use them to measure fluctuations in the electromagnetic field surrounding the meter. Anyway, Zak then explains that as Sean Clenn was leaving the cave and they were hearing that weird growling sound, they caught something very strange on camera. Referring to it as an anomaly that shoots around Sean Clenn's leg, the show presents a clip displaying something that appears to move in an arc kind of up from the ground, a little above Sean Clenn's knee, and then back down towards the ground, as if trying to attack him from behind. I am 99% sure that it's a moth, and I'm 100% sure that it's an insect. You can see the wings. After asking if they should maybe not stay there, Zak and one of the guys say they feel a cold wind coming from within the cave, and posit that it could be the spirit leaving. Which again, just not how Skinwalkers work. But anyway, it's at this moment, while showing video filmed by one of the crew members of Sean Clenn leaving, that Zak says in voiceover that we were also caught up in this mysterious energy field coming out of the cave that we never realized Sean Clenn left to go back to our base camp. Again, they filmed him leaving, but they didn't realize he left. A lot of Ghost Adventures seems to be Zak saying things happened on screen, aware that since his show is on cable and not usually on, streaming, most of their views come from cable, I believe, that people can't just go back and rewind and look and see what happens. So he kind of just says things happened even though they didn't. Which again, makes sense considering Ghost Adventures started in, '06. I think he just never got out of the habit of lying to his audience, which is a problem when streaming services exist. Also, other really funny thing, this episode is only available on Hulu. Everywhere else I went to try and watch this episode, it said this episode is not available in your country. But anyway, Sean Clenn leaves and Zak follows that up by explaining, I think he knows that these evil creatures have been released, and if they are heading back to the chuck wagon, we need to get back there and try to protect the Austin family while trying to document further proof of them. Which, I want to be clear, brings this, but you might have been going, oh, well, he hasn't said Skinwalkers specifically in this scene, so maybe it's, no, he's still talking about Skinwalkers, he's just wrong. Also, what the hell is Zak Bagans gonna do to fight a Skinwalker? But anyway, before they can head back to the chuck wagon, they actually do run into Sean Clenn back at the ATVs, where they find him making an offering of tobacco as he calls out to the spirits of the hole, of the mountain, of the canyon, of the area, the tribes and the spirits and other beings, saying, I'm going to offer you this tobacco in exchange that you do not follow us home. And that, from what I can tell, is a legitimate Navajo spiritual practice. And I want to say also that I am well aware of the optics of me, a white man, arguing against the word of a Navajo man when it comes to Navajo beliefs. But I must reiterate that at no point in this episode has Sean Clenn told the guys that Skinwalkers are not spirits, and I genuinely can't understand why that is. He must know that. This is not his first time being in an episode of Ghost Adventures. It's not even his first time being involved in an episode of Ghost Adventures that's about Skinwalkers. And it's been 6 years between the 2 episodes he's in that involve Skinwalkers. So he should know that the Ghost Adventures guys keep saying Skinwalkers are demonic entities, and I don't get why he has not corrected them, or at least why he has not refused to continue working with them if they're just gonna keep lying about Navajo beliefs in order to make money on the Travel Channel, or Discovery Plus, or whatever it's on now. And again, this is not me trying to criticize Sean Clenn, I feel the need, given the optics of the situation, to defend my position on this before before people take it the wrong way and assume that this is me saying I know better than him. That's not what I'm saying here. I'm saying he must know So why isn't he correcting them? And don't go hate on Sean Clenn. Don't go to his YouTube channel and be jerks about it. Like, please do not do that. I'm at a loss. I'm confused. And I've looked into it. There does seem to be some agreement from the Navajo community that Sean Clenn is... I will say this. I have seen both positive and negative feedback from the Navajo community regarding Sean Clenn and his reliability. That said, I guess get that bag, bro. You know, it's your community. If they're fine with it, do your thing. Anyway, back at the chuck wagon, Zak tells the camera, "We're terrified, just gonna be honest with you all," as he explains that they're going to use a drone to survey the James property because of what just happened at that cave. He explains that, "We believe we've documented these entities leaving the cave, so we could be in danger right now doing what we're doing on this very night because of the relevance of what we just did at the cave where that ritual took place and how we've disturbed it." But just to quickly recap here, the evidence that they collected at the cave was they caught an EMF reading that is given off by household appliances while pointing a camera at the meter, and there was a cool breeze. That's our evidence thus far regarding skinwalkers, which again are not spirits, being in the cave. Regardless, they send up the drone, which is mounted with a thermal camera, and Zak says they're going to focus on the property of the Chuck Wagon Inn, including the old cabin where the criminal was staying, where the Skinwalker was seen coming out of the door running across right here. Then we're going to fly over the field, which is behind the house where James lives. And Hunter said the criminal was staying in their garage, and the marshals said he had a campsite, and I don't recall any mention of anyone capturing a dark entity leaving the cabin, but so what? As they get the drone going, Aaron, Jay, and the equipment tech, Jeff, set up an experiment to actually bring in an animal or a skinwalker, with cameras focused on 2-day-old meat that they have placed on the ground near the abandoned house. Why do they think this will attract skinwalkers, who are described throughout Cluckhone's work as being cannibals who kill people, drag their corpse back to a cave where the skinwalkers all gather, and then eat them? Apparently, this is because of the association between skinwalkers and cattle mutilations. Why do they think skinwalkers have anything to do with cattle mutilations? Well, I would assume it's because there were cattle mutilations at Skinwalker Ranch, which are usually blamed on aliens, by the way. Why is it called Skinwalker Ranch? Because one of the people who used to live there saw a large wolf attacking his cattle, shot at it, and when it didn't seem to be affected by the bullets, he thought that meant it was a skinwalker, I suppose. Now, are skinwalkers unaffected by bullets? According to any of the 100+ accounts recorded by Cluckhone? No, and in fact, several of those informants said they're completely vulnerable to normal human weapons. Like guns, bows and arrows. One of the informants even named the local skinwalker and was like, yeah, he got hit by a car. That's how he died. It was just like, oh yeah, old Tom, he was a skinwalker. He got hit by a car and he just kicked it. Which is impressive because, again, this was the 1930s. This means that this man, this skinwalker, got hit by a Model T. None of that matters to the Ghost Adventures guys, though, who go on to say that as they dumped the meat onto the ground, they heard the sound of an animal moving in the bush around them. An experience Zak also has at his location a couple miles away, you know, in pretty rural Utah, where there are just animals. Now, we'll get to Zak in a minute, but for now we're going to focus on Aaron's group, who are explaining that skinwalkers travel in packs of coyotes, which is the first time that anyone other than Sean Clenn on this show has said anything remotely accurate about skinwalkers. And then Jay ruins a beautiful moment by suggesting that if they attract a pack of real coyotes, maybe there will be a skinwalker among them, which just isn't how that works. They often do disguise themselves as coyotes, and the whole skinwalker witchcraft, like witchcraft in the Navajo spiritual world does have an inherent association with coyote, the spiritual figure coyote, as in he created the witchcraft they use. So that actually, like, yes, coyote has an association, but skinwalkers do not disguise themselves and then travel in packs of coyotes. For more on the actual skinwalker lore, please go check out the Skinwalker Canyon episode. It's linked in the description. Also linked in the description, our merch and our coffee. Check it out. Oh, and we're going to Colorado and to California next summer. So check out the description to get on those trips with us if you're interested. But where was I? Right, the meat trap. Along with the meat trap, I'm just going to keep calling it that because I like that term, they have speakers set up to play infrasound to see if that will cause a ripple in the spiritual dimension. Which again, doesn't make sense when we're talking about human witches who use poison powder to attack their victims. But speaking of infrasound, that's our opinion of what happened at Kamar Daban. Check that out too. Just have an opportunity to self-promote here. It's going great. Back at the chuck wagon, Zak and Billy send up the drone, and Zak points out 3 heat signatures in a field, asking, "What are those?" Billy, deadpan, replies, "I believe those are horses." It's going great, guys. He continues turning the drone towards the chuck wagon, but suddenly they lose picture as the drone moves out of range of their monitor. When they do manage to regain the imaging, and they turn back towards James Austin's house, they capture an unknown heat signature as it moves out of sight in front of the home. Could it be a skinwalker? Perhaps. But it's more likely that it's just, James. Following this, the show takes us back to Jay and Aaron, who have just turned on the coyote distress audio and the infrasound setup to try and lure in skinwalkers. Now, the coyote distress sounds, aside from having a hilarious name, sound a lot like Archie when he's mad at Ella for taking his toys, but that's beside the point. Shortly thereafter, Jay and Aaron think they hear footsteps by the van, and they leave Jeff behind to man the cameras while they go to investigate. "You're not a skinwalker, are you?" "No. You're not smart enough to be a skinwalker. You're such a dumb little guy." I love him so much. Now, there's nothing by the van, but they do see a light in the distance, shining through the branches of a tree. And do you see the blinking light on the bridge? Aaron asks, prompting Jay to reply that skinwalkers, remember he said they travel along the creek too. Apparently someone told them this somehow has to do with remaining undetected. Why nobody considers the possibility that the light is just coming from the bridge itself is beyond me. They don't stay focused on the light long, however, because almost immediately after they notice the lights, something draws their attention in another direction. Panning to the left, one of the guys swears he saw something move, though it's difficult to see what it is on screen. There's then a hard cut to what must have been some time later, as Aaron notices that the leaves of the trees appear to be moving in spite of the lack of wind. Zak, in voiceover, then directs our attention to a patch on the ground where the UV camera captures something very interesting. Some type of anomaly or form moves from the tree in front of them, and only the UV cameras capture it within the ultraviolet spectrum. Oh, okay, bye. Now, this moment with the UV camera capturing something that the infrared camera doesn't actually is a little interesting. Zak is correct to say that the movement only shows up on the UV camera, though on camera it really looks like it's just a couple of leaves being turned over by the breeze. That said, the non-UV camera is either set further back from the spot of the movement, or else it's not zoomed in quite as much. It's also from a different angle, more in line with the direction of the movement, which could make it harder to perceive given how grainy the picture is. Either way, back at the chuck wagon, Billy captures strange lights, just like what Jay and the guys documented, and they start hovering from left to right while twinkling. Guys, I cannot possibly understate how obvious this is just from watching the show. It's somebody with a flashlight and a headlamp. There is zero question in my mind that what they captured was someone out for a late night stroll. The higher of the two lights remains at a static elevation, while the lower of the two lights swings back and forth about halfway between the top light and the ground. You can even make out some of the person's body. I would have laughed if I wasn't so exhausted from rewatching every frame of this episode 18 times. By the way, this is only halfway through. We are only halfway through the episode Skinwalker Invasion, which unfortunately, or perhaps fortunately, depending on how much fun you're having, means we're only halfway through this episode of The Lore Lodge, which may turn out to be longer than this episode of Ghost Adventures. I'm not sure whether to chuckle or sob. It gets worse, though, because Zak proceeds to say, we have to go over there, dramatizing the situation as much as possible as they stroll down the block holding their cameras. Of course, this is a show about suspense, so we once again, as they're going over there to check out the person, the flashing, twinkling lights, we're once again flipped back to the ranch property, where Aaron and Jay are preparing to enter the abandoned house. Once inside, Aaron pulls out his EMF reader, puts on his big boy voice, and confidently asks, "Hey, would you please talk to us? We're trying to find out who the Skinwalkers are. What do you have to say about it? Do you have any thoughts?" He then turns around and suddenly yells, "Bro, what's the flashing going on behind you? Did you see that?" To Jay, who says he saw it, even though he was facing the same direction as Aaron, and therefore could not have seen whatever was supposedly behind him. I want to be clear, that prior to Zak yelling about everything, they're both facing this way. Zak then turns around and yells, "Bro, did you see that?" about something supposedly back here. Jay is still facing this way. Aaron's facing this way. The thing's back here. How did Jay see it? And of course, to answer this question, Zak chimes in on the voiceover to say that just as Aaron sees a flashing light, our X camera also catches it, which would be great evidence if not for the fact that the clip playing while he says this shows the same room, now empty, from the same angle which previously had Aaron and Jay standing right in front of the camera. So like, when the clip that shows the light, the flashing light that Aaron supposedly saw, does not have Aaron and Jay in it. Not only that, but the flashing light shown on whatever an X camera is not even close to being in the same place that Aaron was emphatically pointing to in the prior shot. Add in Aaron's community theater level delivery, and it's pretty clear that this scene was staged, and the flashing light was added in post. But anyway, the guys, now in frame once again, in the same location, take a minute to describe what they felt when the light entered the room, with Aaron ascertaining that it must be a spirit because they felt it touching them. Just as Jay says he feels like he's being touched, Zak's voice, like an ethereal song coming from the voiceover studio, directs our attention towards the lower right corner of the shot, where a ball of light appears behind Jay. Or, more realistically, a speck of dust floats close to the camera lens. It's not even hard to tell that it's dust, especially when Zak points out the anomaly once more, this time right next to Aaron, noting that it changes shape as it floats upward. Like how dust would appear on camera if the air caused it to swirl a little bit. The lads then depart the house and head over to the old 1800s power plant, also on the property. And once inside, Aaron conducts an Ovilus session, which results in incredible and relevant messages. And yes, that is how Zak describes it. Now, I didn't know what an Ovilus was, so I looked that up too. Turns out it is a piece of dedicated ghost hunting equipment, and by that what I mean is that it's not like an EMF reader where it has a legitimate function. It was created for ghost hunting, and it's a piece of equipment which the inventors claim is able to translate EMF readings into words. Is there any science to that? Of course not. Do the people who make them make money if their device never shows ghost activity? Of course not. Does Zak care about that? Of course not. Anyway, after Aaron asks the room, what's this place used for? What is this area? The Ovilus lights up with 3 words: aggression, area, and kill. And seconds later, kill vanishes from the screen, and the words, for me, appear. What could it possibly mean? A rational man would say it means the device is designed to give you an adrenaline rush, but Zak Bagans is no such man. Could this connect to the land's history and the Native American that Jerry and I saw yesterday? He asks. And if you thought this was ridiculous already, well, buckle up. We were told that near this power plant are the ruins of an underground temple. Was this an area of aggression where many Native Americans were killed? And leaving aside the Native Americans were killed part, we were told that near this power plant are the ruins of an underground temple. I want to focus on that. Who told you that, Zak? Who told you that the ruins of an underground temple were there? A Native American underground temple. Who told you that? No, really. Who told you? What tribe in the area utilized underground temples? What local tribe had something that could even be accurately described as any kind of temple? I mean, I have an idea who told him that, but I don't want to cause fights, so I'll refrain from saying it. Needless to say, no, there is no evidence of a Native American temple anywhere near Torrey, Utah. The closest thing that matches that description is an ancient Pueblo village ruin 36 miles south of the ranch. In case you were thinking, it can't possibly get worse, I promise you that yes, it very much does. Aaron, fresh off that first set of Ovilus readings, wonders aloud, Skinwalker, is that what it's saying? The boys sure think so, especially after Jay turns it around to show Aaron 3 new words: head, kill, cow. Which is just, a game we used to play when I was a child, but, whatever. The guys are certain now there must be a Skinwalker in the area because that's what the Skinwalkers are doing. And I gotta say, I do think that the way the Ovilus works is it listens to what you're saying and generates words based on what you're saying. I was in pain at this point in the writing process. Skinwalkers and cattle mutilations aren't actually connected in any of the lore. The horrors persist, yet so do I. Jay then asks if the entity they're communicating with is a victim of the Skinwalker and if it knows about the supposed ritual up at the cave, to which the Ovilus responds, devil, prop, wind. Though Jay is confused, Aaron immediately grasps the meaning. What happened when we turned the sound on? The wind picked up. That was a prop. Not only that, but the thermal camera outside had captured an unusual heat mass, which moved across the yard to the abandoned house and then out towards the old power plant. Zak notes that Aaron felt a gust of warm air outside too, and ponders if these events are connected. Of course, as with the flashing light inside the abandoned house, the thermal shot showing the unusual heat mass Zak related to the wind does not include Aaron and Jay. Also, definitely it is just the screen flickering, but that's neither here nor there. Now, to uninitiated novices like us, none of this connects in any meaningful way, but to those who are wise in the ways of science, they clearly confirm the presence of a skinwalker. Did they film a skinwalker? No, they didn't. Did they resolve the part where Zak and Billy mistook the person out for a walk for orbs floating down the street? Nope. Will they ever learn what a skinwalker actually is? Seems unlikely. Because with that last bit, the investigation ends. At least, that's where the first half of the investigation ends. Now that we've finished an incredible and terrifying Skinwalker investigation, Zak begins. Yep, you see what I did there? We're switching over to now focusing on the human side of the hauntings. Because, skinwalkers aren't human or anything, right? The good news is that part 2 is mostly eyewitness interviews, which can be easily summarized. And that's a line that I wrote before I actually started writing this chapter. No, it couldn't just be easily summarized. This was painful. But first, we get a history lesson. As the story goes, the chuck wagon became caught in the middle of a great darkness when E.P. Pechtel, a former owner of the property, dug up sacred Native American shields and promptly displayed them in his museum on the second floor of the chuck wagon, exploiting thousands of years of sacred history. It appears that Zak is completely unaware of the irony of what he's just said. The shields were repatriated to the Navajo Nation in 2003 after spending decades in National Park Service custody, just for the record. And the haunting activity didn't begin until 2021. I'm not saying there's no weirdness going on at the chuck wagon. Again, I think that there actually might be. But if it is, it would be weird for the spirits to wait, 18 years to decide to show up. Also, it doesn't make sense that, is this because of the Skinwalker Ranch visit, or is this because of the shields? Again, I really think that this show being designed for network television explains a lot. Anyway, almost as if by design, they get word that someone on the property experienced poltergeist activity as soon as they started their interviews. Serendipitous indeed. That said, the one reporting it was Devin, he's the one who struck out to me as being sincere, so let's withhold judgment. He told the crew that someone named Barbara was using the bathroom when the trash can lid just started spinning. Zak and the crew then head inside and ask Barbara what happened, and she confirms what Devin told them, adding that it stopped moving when she asked, "Are we gonna give them a show tonight?" That's not all, though. According to Barbara, there's a male ghost, non-malicious, about 6'2" or 6'3", who she sees pacing along the back wall. After explaining that, with zero prompting or hesitation, she blurts out, "I've had another soul inside of me at the same time." As if that's something you just say to people. That said, it does come across as like a book talk kind of thing, so. Zak, however, looks understandably taken aback after she says that, and then Barbara heads over and hands some crystals to Devin, then returns to show Zak around the place. Both of them claim that they feel a cold wind pass by inside of the store as they make their way towards the back, although it should be noted that Zak is standing in front of a commercial-grade refrigerator when he says this. Barbara also says that she feels something heavy on her left side, and the EMF reader spikes as it gets closer. Then, as suddenly as it spiked, the reader goes back to 0, and Aaron shoves himself into a crawl space behind where Barbara had been standing with a recording device to ask the ghost if it's a portal, and then we're abruptly switched over to Devin for some supporting details. I want to be clear, this is another situation where they introduce something, in this case, Aaron asking about portals, and then never resolve it. They will reference it later, but there's no recording that suggests it is a portal. They're just like, I wonder if there's a portal back there. And then Devin does confirm later that, maybe there is a portal there, or that there are people who believe there's a portal there. Let me get back to my script before I get too far off of it. But among these details, these supporting details Devin gives, is a belief around the property that the spirit of a little girl hides under the staircase in the general store, and that there's a portal of some kind in the building. That, to be honest, felt like one of those situations where maybe this was staged. The delivery was different from when Devin was talking about a number of other things. Maybe I'm giving him too much benefit of the doubt, but hey, I want to believe, okay? Next up, we hear from Devin's cousins, Kylie and Kayshan, who want to tell us about a terrifying experience they had in the back bedroom. Kylie, wearing a sweatshirt with the name of a fictional Pennsylvania town, Rosewood, which is loosely based on an area I'm very familiar with, Rosemont, says that she and Kayshan were sitting on the bed talking to Devin, who was standing with his back to a mirror. And as they chatted, the girl saw something fly in the mirror behind him, and then Devin felt something scratch his neck. Seconds later, Kylie's nose started bleeding profusely, which she said is something that's very rare for her. And Kayshan, for her part, says that she blocked the whole experience out involuntarily and can't recall any of it happening. That said, both girls do come across as somewhat sincere. So something must be in the building, the team concludes, but since in the first part of the investigation they confirmed that skinwalkers can't enter buildings, it has to be something else. And I have no idea what they're referring to because that simply isn't in the first half of the episode at all. It's also not true. Like, skinwalkers sneaking into people's homes is very much part of the lore, though they don't particularly prefer to do things that way. They prefer to sprinkle things in through windows or chimneys. They're also not spirits, but I feel like we all grasp that aspect by now. All of us but Zak. That said, I do very much agree that it's not a skinwalker causing any of the activity in the building. If the activity is real, of course. As they explore the Chuck Wagon's upstairs suite, which is available to rent for less than $300 a night this time of year, the guys think they feel cold air and some sort of concentrated energy. In order to learn more, they bring in another person who had an experience in that part of the property. Zak interviews the janitor, Jose, who explains through broken English that he doesn't like going in the upstairs of the building because there's something very bad there. And once while he was cleaning, he believes that it tried to possess him. But reluctantly, Jose does agree to go upstairs with the guys, and they film as he leads them to where he had his encounter. And Jose, I must say, looks absolutely petrified. He is legitimately upset, tears and everything. Like, it's some of the more compelling evidence that whether we can trust ghost adventures or not, something may really be going on here. And Jose's nerves only get worse as he leads them to a back staircase, which itself leads downstairs, indicating that this is where his experience occurred. And this staircase, according to the Ghost Adventures crew, leads to the crawl space on the first floor, where Zak believes they discovered a portal. Granted, they didn't ever show evidence of this portal, just people saying there was a portal, but don't mind that. Anyway, once inside the stairwell, Zak says that he feels a strong presence, and just seconds later, Jose begins to panic and backs out, almost knocking Zak over in the process. He goes all the way back to the other side of the suite, opens the door to the main area of the building, and sits down on those stairs with his head in his hands. One of the guys gently asks him what happened, and Jose explains that he saw something while holding the camera at the top of the other stairs, something black. This is a direct quote. This is not, like, I know I've been making fun of Zak. I'm not making fun of Jose here. This is his direct quote from the episode. "Me see something at the bottom," he says, already halfway out the door. "Go inside, open the door, you go inside, the little door, something opened." Then, after begging permission to leave, he heads out the door and towards his truck. And then, for some reason that is literally never addressed again, Zak says that he feels like whatever he was feeling in that building left with Jose, and then expresses his belief that whatever is here... Oh, sorry. Oops, hang on. "Whatever is here, it's not friendly. It's not looking to cross over. It seems to want to get darker." And with that, the investigation winds down for the night. "An indigenous chief once said, 'There is no death, only a change of worlds,'" Bagans says as day 2 of part 2 of the investigation begins. And he's right. A chief did say that. He wasn't a Navajo chief, mind you, nor Ute or Paiute, nor even from the same family as any of those groups, or even the same general region of the continent, but Chief Seattle of the Suquamish and the Duwamish did say that. Not sure how it connects here. Regardless, they're on their way out into the desert where Zak asks the crew, "Those shields were upstairs inside of the bedrooms. What purpose did those shields have? Removing them from a sacred spot. What did that do? Did that open a portal to the Skinwalkers?" Guys, this episode came out in 2024. There's no excuse for not at least reading the Wikipedia page on Skinwalkers at this point. Like, there is no excuse for being this wrong about Skinwalkers. Anyway, as they approach a cliff face marked with petroglyphs, a very short distance from the chuck wagon, that being over 7 road miles, or a little over 4 as the crow flies, Zak tells the crew that they need to meet with someone. And earlier in the episode, James told Zak that an old Indian chief told me, always close your blinds at night because they can look through the blinds and go into your soul. And that old Indian chief is the man they're here to see. Just beneath the cliff, they meet up with Chief Kevin, described as a ceremonial master of the Dakota tribe. And I had been wondering, since it was first mentioned much earlier in the episode, what kind of Navajo chief would tell James that skinwalkers can go into your soul by looking through a window, considering that's just not anywhere in the recorded lore. I no longer wonder about that. I'm not trying to be rude or dismissive of Native individuals. It's just that bringing a Dakota man in to talk about Navajo lore is like calling someone who practices traditional Slavic religion to explain traditional Celtic religion. The two might share some broad similarities, but that's about it. And the Dakota Sioux do not have skinwalkers. They just don't. I believe Chief Kevin is married to a Navajo woman. So that might be why they brought him in. But yeah, this would be particular to Navajo lore, not Dakota ceremonial practices. All of that said, Zak tells Chief Kevin that they've been somewhere that scared them all, and asks if the petroglyphs can tell them anything about what's going on in the area. Chief Kevin tells the boys that most of the time what you see in petroglyphs is seasonal. These could be hunting, these could be kills. He points to one and says that one up on top right there could be representing the sun. And then he throws a curveball. Not everything you see written on these stones was actually done by humans, by the way. But if not humans, then who? Spirits, Kevin suggests. Or it could be done by other entities. It's hard to say for certain, as Kevin has never seen some of the markings before. Pointing to one he suggests is a man with a hoop holding a northern feather off to the side, he notes that this figure is unlike all the rest of these. The rest of the figures are indeed different, as they appear to be four-legged animals of some kind or another. What does the man signify? And what of his hoop? Zak asks if the hoop could signify a portal to another dimension, and Kevin responds, sometimes they do come through portals, though what he means by they is unclear. He seems to imply that skinwalkers use portals to travel between the spirit world and this one, which, of course, doesn't make a lot of sense, because they're, again, not spirits. But before he can elaborate any further, Jay walks off and sits down, saying he feels lightheaded. And I also want to interject here that I'm not questioning Chief Kevin or Sean Glenn nearly as much as whoever is editing the Ghost Adventures episodes, because they might be misrepresenting people's words. Anyway, as everyone gathers around Jay, he explains that during their investigation, while in the attic, he saw something, and ever since then, felt out of it. And this is confusing because he says attic, but I don't recall there being any portions of the episode where Jay was in an attic. And to make matters worse, Zak's voiceover references the part where they were in the power plant. He says, "It was also at this moment Jay and Aaron received head, kill, cow that now seems to directly connect with these headless animal petroglyphs." I'm not sure they're best described as headless, but I can see where he's coming from. Now, part of me wonders if Jay was talking about something else entirely, and if Zak just ham-fistedly shoved it into the narrative for this episode in order to raise the stakes, and I'm somewhat inclined towards the latter. Asked if he thinks if there is a connection between what Jay is feeling, the entities bothering James and Devin, and the cave they visited with Sean Glenn, Chief Kevin responds that it could be that old medicine men put something here, there might be something buried here, there might be something around here they don't want you trotting on. There's spirits around, there's spirits standing around here, yes, there's dark spirits around, of course there are. And Kevin then tells them that the petroglyphs on the wall are spirit entities sent there to watch them, though I'm not sure how he came to that conclusion. I did try to track down who Chief Kevin is or what credentials he has, but I came up empty. There was a Dakota chief named Kevin, like a tribal chief, not a ceremonial kind of person, but totally different guy. And I want to reiterate, I'm not trying to speak over Indigenous individuals about Indigenous culture, but there are simply too many factual inaccuracies in this episode to ignore. Unless it was cut from the episode, Kevin, much like Sean Glenn, does nothing to correct Zak's misunderstanding of what skinwalkers are. He also allegedly told James something patently untrue. He seems to imply that skinwalkers are summoned through portals. He says the petroglyphs were made by spiritual beings when everything I have been able to dig up says they were made by the Fremont people, who predate Navajo arrival in the region by 1,000 years. And on top of all of that, I have read everything there is to read on Skinwalkers from the most academically reliable sources out there, and almost none of it lines up with anything Chief Kevin said during this episode. Anyway, as they prepare to head back, Zak asks if Chief Kevin senses any darkness with them in that moment, and he tells them, "You've walked someplace, you've brought something with you," adding that it's pretty obvious to me that you guys need some sort of protection. With that, he performs what appears to be some sort of cleansing ritual, and then the guys get back to the investigation in Torrey. Back at the chuck wagon, Zak suits up and heads into the upstairs suite to investigate the area where most of the malicious activity seems to be focused. As he wanders around with night vision goggles on, he begins to feel something around him, particularly as he heads into the back bedroom, where he calls out to the beyond, asking about James and Devin, if there's something wrong, if they're in trouble. And then, as he turns a corner towards a half-open closet, he catches a hanger rotating on its own inside. Granted, he doesn't open the other side of the closet directly left of the hanger, so we can't see if there was someone hiding in there to get it spinning. Look, I'd love to believe that this is a real haunting, but it's Zak Bagans, so... Now, I think my skepticism is confirmed by the next thing to unfold, which is Zak insisting that he's caught another anomaly on camera, which is obviously just dust again. That's enough to prove the presence of the paranormal, though. So he has the rest of the crew come in with the XLS camera, and once again I had to look into what that is, and I shit you not, it's a camera which ghost hunters claim uses the old Xbox Kinect technology with infrared and LiDAR to detect and map an area and detect human forms. Its reliability in tracking ghosts is disputed. But as Billy heads up the stairs with the camera, it begins to pick up a stick figure at the top of the staircase, which, is on one wall, then jumps up to the ceiling, and then back to a different wall, and then crawls down the stairs before disappearing towards Aaron, who I must admit is admirably calm about that whole thing. He's less calm when he finds a black feather on the couch upstairs, and then the guys freak out trying to make sense of it until the XLS camera spots another stick figure contorting itself around on the ceiling. It does appear to be live footage of the screen and not superimposed in post, but again, not sure how reliable these things are. There were a lot of instances where people's Kinect caught a ghost in their living room back in the day. I remember this being a whole thing. The technology was not perfect. It was a cool concept, but not executed very well. That said, if what they caught is real, that is freaky as hell. It's also a little freaky that as they try to tell Zak, he for some reason ignores them and instead goes back into the back bedroom to use the spirit box. And the spirit talking to him, a female, tells them, "Turn it off." And when Zak asks if there's a spirit that would like to communicate with them, it replies, "No." Asked about the portal, it replies, "Turn that off." And then it does not reply when asked if something moved the hanger. Zak does not seem surprised by these responses, so I figure this is usually how it goes when he talks to women. Now, eventually, Zak does check back in with Aaron and Billy, who ask if he knows about the feather. And he does, but before any conversation can occur, they all seem to hear a disembodied voice, and then they head downstairs to check on Jay, who apparently is not doing well. And what do you do if your friend isn't feeling well? You send him to go sit in a dark cabin in the very same recliner where someone reportedly was canoodled by a dark entity. And Jay must really be out of it because he agrees to do that while everyone else heads into the general store to walk around with a number of devices and conduct a polterpod session. I looked that up too, and it's basically just a spirit box that claims to be better than a spirit box. Nothing happens for a while, but suddenly they hear a male voice somewhere in the building and immediately shut off the polterpod, which, to be clear, is not where the voice came from. Zak starts talking to the spirit, telling it he's placed a bunch of meters in front of the crawl space, and he asks it to open the portal. But when nothing happens, he asks it to throw something off a shelf. Then he dares it, and then he taunts it for being too weak to do so. And then suddenly, the meters begin to show extremely mild, almost undetectable changes in the temperature, and a slight draft, which absolutely confirms there is a ghost in the building. Apparently. Either because the entity is screwing with him or because he's really, really hungry, Aaron starts eating snacks off the shelf, which leads to the best line of the entire episode, as Zak's voiceover comes in to say, "It's at this moment that I become extremely agitated that Aaron is eating their crackers as we are investigating." After some arguing over Aaron's manners, Zak tells him to just leave cash on the counter, and they leave to head back to HQ. But they're not there long before another twist occurs. As soon as they get inside, Zak receives a message from Devin about a conversation he had with Chief Kevin. and they show a portion of the texts. As it would happen, Chief Kevin texted him to say that on his way out of town, he hit a coyote. And Devin asked if his truck was okay, and Kevin replied that he hasn't checked yet because it's awkward to pull over and look, and then added that coyote is a part of Skin Runner's walkers. This is, I am not kidding, the first thing Kevin has said in the entire episode, which is accurate to Skinwalker lore, as recorded by Cluckhone or really anyone else, and Cluckhone was incredibly well respected by the Navajo during his lifetime. Now, though Ghost Adventures doesn't show the messages, Zak adds that Kevin also apparently mentioned that he didn't talk with the guys about Skinwalkers because the more you talk about them, the more they come after you. And Kevin's wife, who was there for the day but off camera, added that it's just odd and a coincidence that these things happened, which counters what she says next, that being, it looks like your entities in your store is real and these Skinwalkers are real around your home. Kevin also sent a picture of the front of his truck, which appears completely undamaged, and says that when we hit it, it sounded like shattered ice, like glass shattering, but it left no blood or other marks even though they hit the coyote head on. And then that's kind of just where that ends. Back in the cabin, the guys go to check on Jay, who still seems out of sorts, and Zak's voiceover directs our attention to yet another anomaly floating up and away from Jay, who strangely, seemingly out of nowhere, says they would like to see you. At this very moment, Zak believes that he sees a dark shadow near Aaron, both on the night vision camera and on his thermal still camera. He managed to capture several stills, and I have to say, if they are undoctored, it is some of the more compelling evidence I've seen from the show. At least 2 of the 3 images show a narrow cold patch near Aaron, once in front of his head and then again on the floor behind him, almost as if a person was kneeling. If they've caught any concrete evidence of spiritual presence, it's here, so they do the only thing that seems appropriate at the time. They leave Jay sitting in the recliner and go back to HQ to talk about him. Realizing that there is something attached to Jay, and probably all of them, Zak and Billy head out to set up the hover map system, which is apparently another LiDAR tool. What this would do to get rid of the spirit, they don't say, but it does look pretty cool. Still, it doesn't pick anything up, and that's where the episode just ends, with Zak concluding that Devin and James are at the center of a very dangerous outbreak of threatening activity. And shockingly, I actually kind of agree with them. Life is not separate from death. It just looks that way. Is, according to Zak Bagans' first words of the episode Skinwalker Invasion, a Native American proverb. Perhaps it is, but the only person I've been able to trace it to is a non-native woman who claims to be psychic, who said it was a Blackfoot proverb, and yet, in a way, that is perfectly representative of everything Zak Bagans has ever said about Skinwalkers. He is a non-native guy who constantly cites Native American beliefs that don't seem to exist outside the realm of his show, and he pretends that he knows how to communicate with the dead. As for the quote, there is a similar one from a Blackfoot chief named Crowfoot, but not similar enough, and it's also not even close to being from the relevant tribal group. The Blackfoot are Algonquian. But enough about that, we have an entity to diagnose. One thing we can say for certain is that if something is bothering the Austins and their employees, it definitely is not a Skinwalker. It's also true that very little of the evidence that the Ghost Adventures crew recorded to prove that the Chuck Wagon is haunted was compelling, and even if it appeared to be, they're not trustworthy. That said, I'm not entirely convinced that the whole haunting is a hoax, if only because of how serious many of the eyewitnesses seem to be. Devin came across as very sincere, Jose looked downright terrified, and perhaps most convincingly, the Chuck Wagon doesn't seem to be advertising any sort of haunted aspects. If you're not trying to make money off the haunted aspect of your haunted bed and breakfast, it seems a little odd to try and convince people that it's haunted in the first place, especially given how bad Jay looks by the end of the episode. That said, if there is something going on there, and everyone was telling the truth, everyone not on the Ghost Adventures payroll that is, then whatever is there doesn't sound like a poltergeist. It sounds a lot more demonic, and that's a pretty serious concern that should be addressed by a priest. But what could have brought a demonic presence into the lives of the Austin family? Because remember, this all, as far as they are concerned, all of this started in 2021. Unfortunately, it's impossible to say without further interviews or exploration. Infestations like this can be brought on by something as simple and silly as using a Ouija board, or it could have been something much more complicated. You know, there's certain kinds of witchcraft, divination, or even the deliberate invocation of a demonic entity which could be responsible. Personally, I would love to go down there and head out to the ranch, head out to the bed and breakfast, the inn, look around a little bit, because I am interested. I have reasons to believe that, again, it's really hard for me to say this without starting any fights. I have personal reasons to believe that there might be something wonky going on down there from a religious ritual aspect. But given the lack of further information, you know, if the Ghost Adventures crew were competent, I might be able to look at this and have an idea of what happened. But unfortunately, they're more concerned with lying about what skinwalkers are and overly dramatizing the wrong things instead of going and gathering any good evidence of anything. You know, maybe instead of just walking around with cameras, they could have, I don't know, interviewed all of the family members and been like, hey, any of you been doing any seances lately? Anybody desecrate a nearby grave? The church next door, anything funky going on there? But no, it's all just, let's bring in weird, you know, technology that may or may not actually work and do things that way. I will tell you this much, we do have a great opportunity to go and basically fact check the Ghost Adventures crew's work, because they did an episode on Penhurst Asylum, which is 10 minutes from us. And I am in touch with Penhurst, and we're going to have to pay for it, which sucks, but we are going to be going over there and spending a night in the asylum. Basically, I can't remember the exact hours we're able to be there, but I've been assured that they do not set anything up. They aren't paying actors. You are literally just going in there, spending a night doing your own little ghost hunt, and that's how it goes. That's it. I will say this, if you are a ghost hunter who is local to, you know, southeastern Pennsylvania, and that can include Maryland, New Jersey, Delaware, if you're in the area, and you'd be interested in doing that with us, please send us an email to thelorelodge@gmail.com, and we will try to get back to you, because we would love to have some people who have the equipment, because that's not our thing. So if anybody wants to come along, you'd be featured in the episode. You know, we would give you a shout out and everything, and you would be able to use whatever footage you capture for your own projects. And we will, it's to be just very blunt about it, it's $1,200 to rent the place for the night. So we'll foot that bill. We can't pay you, but we'll pay for the experience itself. And we'll get pizza. Back to the issue of the chuck wagon, though. I don't know. I wish I could sit here and diagnose it and say, yeah, I've looked at it. I know exactly what's going on there. I don't, but I do get the sense that, at the very least, a couple of people there genuinely believe there's something in that building. The one consistent thing was dark entities. They do appear in both inside and outside of the home in the stories that are told, and in multiple points on the property. So it's not all just one building, which would lead me to believe that whatever it is attached to the family, not the property, which would suggest that somebody in the family was doing something to reach out to the spiritual realm, the paranormal world. And maybe you're sitting here going, oh my god, Aiden, you're a guy who's constantly debunking things. How are you talking about demons? I believe in some things. My whole job isn't to be a killjoy. I've experienced some weird stuff. I've talked about it on the show multiple times. I think that there's stuff we don't understand out there. I just don't often see good evidence of it. But, you know, if that's something you'd be interested in us doing, is more like on the ground kind of, I wouldn't call it ghost hunting, but going to places and really diving into the story and why people think it's haunted, then I'm happy to do that. As a Penn State alum, that we have a bit of a tradition of that. The show Paranormal State ran for 3 seasons, and it was run by the Penn State Paranormal Research Society. But all of that said, with the limited information we have here, whatever's going on there, it does seem demonic in nature. I haven't seen any bad news coming out of the area. Hopefully whatever it is, it's moved on and it's not a big deal, or maybe they did the right thing and called in a priest, you know, instead of Zak Bagans. Who knows? Anyway, that's all we have for today's episode. I'm sorry if you felt baited. I hope you didn't. I wrote this in 2 days. And I also was expecting more. Like if you guys are disappointed, imagine how I feel. I was hoping I was going to be able to get to the end of this and be like, oh yeah, this is the demon Vishasha, and he's there because Hunter and his girlfriend did a Ouija board in the cabin on Halloween night, and what they need to do is call in a priest to do a specific invocation ritual. No, I don't know, and I wish I did, but who knows? Maybe I'll be able to get in touch with the Austins and we can chat about it on the live show, which we have to shoot in about an hour, so it's time for us to eat dinner. We got a munch. It is a Monday night. I'm getting hungry. So, yeah. Let me know if you guys liked this episode. I feel like maybe I've been too serious lately, and I'm trying to be less serious, like still factually accurate, but maybe a little bit less like a college professor, because I feel like maybe I got a little too like a college professor. You know, I don't know what you people want. What do you want from me? Tell me. Tell me in the comments. Tell me what you want from me. And also, you know, if you want to support what we're doing here at the Lodge, you can watch episodes like this ad-free on Patreon now. We have been getting much better about it. We hired a guy. Please subscribe to the Patreon so we can afford the guy. That would be great. Also, you can check out our merch from Bunker Branding. We don't just have this, and we keep saying we need to add new shirt designs. We definitely want to go to them with new shirt designs, but we need to do better sales before I feel like we're justified in asking for shirt designs. We also have coffee from Tableau Roasting Co. That is Mount Pocono Perk. You can get all of these things at the links in the description. Also linked in the description, our live show. That's not what I was trying to say. I was trying to say our Discord is linked in the description, but while I am on the subject of the live show, the Discord is the best way to get updates about the live show, this show, our other shows, when things are going live. Make sure you tap the notification bell, because for some reason, YouTube uses that as a metric, even though it doesn't actually notify you when the video goes up, but why would anything make sense? Am I missing anything? Oh, right, other channels. And of course, when I say all of our other channels, what I refer to is History Unhinged, that we do with Stephen Bell, Weird Bible, which I'm currently working on a new series for, and my personal channel, Aiden Mattis, where I mostly stream video games, but I'm hoping to get back into the commentary space, where I'd basically do what I did in this episode, but live. I used to do that a lot with like Nuke's Top 5 and Lazy Masquerade, either saying, you know, going into it being like, okay, well, here's why we would think that this is actually an edited video. Here's why this was an extremely rare occurrence. Here's why this one seems like it might be real. Or we'd watch Unsolved Mystery stuff, and I'd kind of talk about like where I'd start looking, you know, what makes something weird, just that live sort of investigative stuff. So if you guys are ever curious about how my thought process works while I'm working on this kind of stuff, those would be the streams to watch. I would love to get back to them. I'm looking at potentially hiring an assistant to help me with research, so I have a little bit more time to devote to things like that, and to my dream is that I can have somebody writing 2 of our episodes a week, or not a week, 2 of our episodes each month, who does it with the same level of detail as I do things now, writes the way I write, and then I can take 2 weeks at a time to work on really big topics, like the Mississippians, the stuff that often ends up taking us 2 episodes to get through. I would love to be able to just do those deep dives, but you know, until we get to a point where I'm not putting out a video myself every week, I'll still present everything. But until we can get to the point where I'm not the only one writing, I can't do that. So hopefully soon. Also, a lot of people have been asking about JonBenet next Christmas. And if you're watching this in 2027, then last Christmas. All right, I think that just about does it, right? Cool. I'm Aiden Mattis, and thanks for stopping by the Lore Lodge.